I'm Matt Downing, and welcome to Diving Deep EDU.
Curious conversations with all types of peeps. Encouraging innovation, we are diving deep. Certainly education is what we like to speak. Fervent with dedication, now it is time to teach. Yeah.
Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me on Diving Deep EDU. This podcast is based in conversations that are willing to go off on a rabbit trail or two in order to find those aha moments. Those times when someone is able to say something in a way that brings increased clarity. Now, I'm an educator, so much of our conversations will have that as the end goal. How can the things that we are talking about help us to dive deeper into educational practices? Thanks for tuning in. Our guest today is Shawn Kanungo. Shawn is a globally recognized innovation strategist. His work and interviews have been featured in a number of publications such as The Guardian, and his content has garnered millions of views. Shawn was named in Forbes as the best virtual keynote speaker I've ever seen, and I would agree to that. Shawn, thank you so much for joining me. You're a basketball fan. We're in the midst of March Madness. This episode will be probably released around when the championship occurs. So tell us, who's going to win?
Well, listen. First of all, if you haven't listened to this podcast, if you've gotten this far and you've been listening to this man for so many episodes, I need you to do him a favor. I need you to rate, review, subscribe. That makes a big. It's a big thing. It might be small for you, but at least for Matt, it's a big thing. So I encourage you guys to do that. And no, I'm just really excited to be on this pod.
Thanks,
And I don't know how do you know I'm a basketball fan? How did you know that?
Shawn, I'm watching the videos. I'm seeing what you got going on. I saw you interviewed the coach of the Raptors, so I see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm more of an NBA fan than NCAA fan, but I think the thing with the NCAA is that there's no real surprises. So I'm probably gonna go with Michigan on this one.
Okay.
They've been rolling pretty well, but what I'm actually worried about, I don't know when this is gonna drop, but I'm from Canada. And we got a guy named Kyle Lowry. He's one of the greatest rappers of all time. He is probably going to be going to the Philadelphia 76ers, your hometown. And
Yep.
I am, I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm okay with it. I'm okay for him to go to the Sixers so that you can actually do something with him. I'm happy for it.
Yeah, I'm a big Lowry fan, Villanova, and he's a Philly guy too. I have to be honest. So do you think he still has a little juice left in the tank? I mean, I'm a little worried we're going to give up a little bit too much. Now, I think you want us to have Lowry because I think you want some of our draft picks and things like that. Is he cooked or does he have a little bit more juice in the tank?
You know what? If you actually watch him still, he's still unbelievable. He surprises everyone with his skill set and his determination, and he's just like the scrappiest guy on the court. But I don't know. I think next year might be his fall year. I think he still has a lot of value, especially if the Sixers are making a run and Embiid comes back, and you got Simmons. I think you guys can do really well. So you can have him though. We won a championship. You can have him.
Now, what was that like for you when you guys won that championship?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest Raptors fan. Like, I love the Raptors. When I go to Toronto, I try to see the Raptors as much as I can. It meant a lot for the country. It meant a lot for me, watching basketball in this country. I'm more of like a players guy. Like, I love following players. To me, that is. I'm an old man, but I'm a kid when I watch basketball. So I love like watching certain players. Like, I love Steph Curry. I love guys with finesse. I love Damian Lillard and Kyrie Irving, like people that have it's just artistry. To me, that's what I love about basketball.
Shawn, I got introduced with your work, because I was experimenting with some different enhancements to my Zoom game, and I thought I was like a big deal. I got the ring light, got a new webcam. I thought I was doing something big, and then I come across you in, in your videos. You got this empty theater, this production company, these graphics. You're moving from camera to camera. You're interacting with people. I love it. Tell us the story of that.
And you're definitely referring to my keynotes, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
pre-COVID I was going across North America, around the world, doing keynotes in front of like live human beings. And then when the pandemic hit, I actually thought it was a home game, because my guys and I, we've been doing so much video
Mm,
for so long that we just said, okay, so how do we elevate the experience? Like, how do we differentiate ourselves from other folks? We had the advantage of, we were shooting content everywhere. We were shooting content before in a studio,
yeah.
in a theater, in studios beforehand. So we're like, okay, so how do we do this? But we do it live. All we
Mm,
need is an internet connection, and really, it's the balls in our court. So, over last year, we've just been experimenting, iterating on how can we just elevate and really create an unbelievable virtual experience. And
mm,
it's been fantastic. And to be honest with you, it's been a trials and tribulations
yeah.
of yeah, just trying new ways of doing things, and it's been unbelievable. To me, when everybody looks like they're in an ISIS hostage video, I just feel like it's so easy to elevate it. And yeah, the reason why we're in the theater is because the acoustics are really great, the
Yeah.
production's really great, the lighting's really great. Like, it's already sort of set up for performance. And
Mhm.
I just didn't understand, and I still don't understand to this day, why more and more people don't use beautiful stages around them, because they're empty. They're sitting
Mhm.
there empty. It's like they're
Yeah.
waiting. They're hungry for revenue. So
Yeah.
it's been an amazing revenue source for them, and it's been great for us too. So yeah.
What's been something that's happened, right, that you've done, that you've tried, and you were thinking to yourself, "Oh, this is gonna be sick. This is gonna be dope," and it just didn't work?
Yeah, I think the first time that we did a hybrid event, so hybrid meaning we had people on stage, we
Oh.
had people in the virtual audience, and
Yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
people in person. That was a bust the first time that we did it,
Mm.
because I don't think anybody has really mastered how to do a great hybrid event as a presenter. Like, how do you give 100% to a virtual audience, looking at a camera and being intimate with a camera, but at the same time catering to an in-person audience? And in fact, it's only like sort of the best of the best can potentially do it. And I think it's still a
Uh-huh.
new territory. It's a new format, new unexplored waters around being able to create an immersive, compelling experience for
Mm.
people virtually and in person. It's like doing a concert, but still,
Yep.
when you're in a concert, you're looking, at the big screen.
Yeah.
You're it's very difficult to pull off. And
Mhm.
the first time that we did it was a bust, because most of the times when people are in person, I would look at them, I would look in their eyes. But
Yeah.
we also had like 300 people virtually that were like even more important. So
Huh.
I should have been looking more at the camera than I was in person. Anyway, so that was a big bust. And since then, we just learned how to do hybrid in new ways, and still learning. I think
Yeah.
it's never going to be mastered.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we need your help with that because I talk with teachers all the time, and
Yeah.
teaching hybrid is one of the most difficult things that they're talking to me about. They're like, "Matt, this is so difficult. All the stuff that you're talking about. What have you seen that's worked well as you've been evolving and changing your hybrid game?"
I think in terms of hybrid, I think what we learned was the people that are in person, they want to understand what's happening virtually. So for
Mm,
them to have a screen to see what's happening for the virtual audience. At the same time, the people in the virtual audience, they want to know what's happening. They want to be there. They want to feel like they're in person. So giving them a bird's eye view of what's happening from an in-person audience. So giving them
mm,
both. I think at the same time, giving them the Q&A and the interactivity, so that
okay,
they can share sort of the same, whether it's voting or Q&A
okay,
platform, and they can sort of collaborate then. But
gotcha.
it's really, how do we create a unique experience so that it's compelling virtually and also in person,
Yeah.
um, and um, and they also understand what everyone is sort of seeing and doing. I think just as human beings, we're just curious. We're like, oh, this is happening virtually. I wonder what it looks like. Where are
Mm,
all the cameras? Like, what's showing up on the screen? and vice versa. So I think that's been the real aha.
So there's a teacher in a classroom. They're teaching hybrid, right? They have some kids in the classroom and they have, like, let's just say 15 kids at home or whatever. And those 15 kids, another complaint is they don't put their video on. So you're just staring at this little, a rectangular blank space. What should those teachers do? What can they do? What's an idea that you might have that's worked and that these teachers can take? Oh, let me try that out. Let me experiment with this and see if this can help engage these or learners or change this situation. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, first of all, which context are you thinking? Are you thinking about post secondary? Are you thinking about
Okay. I'm thinking like, let's just go with the most awkward age. Let's go with middle school.
Yeah, right. Well, first of all, why is it that number one, why is it that their face is not there? I mean, that
Yeah.
that to me is like 80% of it. Like your face
Yeah.
should be there. They should be able to connect with you. They should be able to look in your
Mm,
eyes. I think the entire what we have learned in during this pandemic is that
yeah.
it needs to be a lot more engaging. There needs to be a lot more Q&A. There needs to be
Mm,
a lot more peer-to-peer interaction. I think taking middle age. I mean, every single kid in middle age, they're gaming, right? They're playing, they're Fortnite, they're doing Minecraft, they're on YouTube, they're watching Twitch. It's like, how can we bring more gaming components into what we're
interesting.
doing and
Gotcha.
elevate the educational experience by
Hmm.
leveraging gaming? I mean, everyone's just gaming, and if
Yes.
you're not gaming and you don't understand the nuances, the lingo, the culture of
Yep.
gaming
Yep.
as a teacher in middle school,
Love it.
like you are already irrelevant. Let me repeat
Yes.
that. If you don't understand what's happening in the gaming ecosystem as a teacher, you are
Mm,
fundamentally irrelevant because this is
love it.
how they are engaging with each other,
Mm,
especially during this pandemic.
yeah.
I think at the same time, when it comes to curriculum, we have this the old model of looking at the curriculum is like these old dusty
Yep.
textbooks that had just information that it was done back in the 70s, and I think utilizing things that are uh, micro content video,
Mm,
small snippets, like a TikTok format. um,
mm,
to me, that's where the future is really going to go. It's not about linear learning.
yeah.
It's about modular learning. It's about
Yes.
having unique immersive experiences. And I'm really confused, Matt, and maybe you can help me understand this because you work with educators all the time. You
Yeah.
work with teachers all the time. Um, I'm confused because teachers should know that they are in the business of attention.
Mm,
They are in the business. They compete with Twitch. They compete with Netflix and Instagram and TikTok and board games and time. Uh, that's who they're competing with. And if they're creating an experience even online that replicates what they're doing in sort of a real world, like a teacher at a chalkboard, they're going to lose. They're going to become
yeah.
irrelevant. And so I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to understand this. Why do you think that there's a huge gap between what students want and what teachers can deliver?
I think there's a lot of reasons. I think one of the things to blame is the bureaucracy of it. I think another thing is teachers, and I'm not talking about all of the teachers, but teachers as a whole don't see it as a competition. So they don't see that they're competing with these games or they're competing with attention. It's I have this and you need to learn it. Right? It's you need to get this and you need to get an A, you need to get a B, at least get a D so you can move on to the next grade. So it's not the market. It's not a market mindset. It's a, you got to do this. I did it. You'll need to do it. And we got to keep moving. And it's kind of sad, to be honest, as you're thinking about that, because it lacks what's at your core. It lacks innovation. It lacks progression.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like teachers are supposed to be teaching kids about
Mm,
being agile and being
mm,
open to change and open to new ideas and perspectives, and yet they are still stuck in the past.
mm,
And it's funny, like as somebody who works in innovation, disruption, technology, like maybe that's just sort of embedded in my DNA, where I'm thinking, how do I change the game?
mm,
How do I become more relevant to my
yeah.
end users, customers? How do I disrupt myself? And I think teachers should walk in every single day when they get into the classroom, whether it's in person or online, and ask themselves, like, how do I get fired today? Like, what is a small risk that I can take that will change the trajectory of my
Mm,
students, or change the trajectory of my
yeah.
own career? And by
Mm.
the way, you're not going to get fired. But what you're going to do is you're going to take a risk. You're going to take a small experiment
Mhm.
that's going to move the needle.
Yep.
And whether it's incorporating like cultural collaborations or video or modular
Mhm.
learning or continuous engagement, interactivity,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, um, it's taking that small risk.
Yeah, another thing that just came to my mind as well was, we had John Couch on a couple episodes ago. You can, whoever's
Yeah,
listening, you go
yeah.
back and look at it. He was with Steve Jobs, helped formed Apple and whatnot. And he said Steve said that the the problem with education is the unions. So that's another piece of the puzzle, which I'm not really going to comment on because I'm in a union. But that's definitely another piece of the puzzle that needs to be recognized, needs to be acknowledged, and a lot of people that are outside of the union will point to that with some strong words that people within the union won't use. So
The union piece I find funny, because I think people blame the union, but the union is actually in the business of making sure that their members remain relevant, that they
true.
may remain competitive.
Yes.
Like, so they should be in the business of innovation. They should
Mm.
be in the business of giving their members the tools and technologies and uh, just a mindset around how do we reinvent ourselves. And so
Mm.
that's what I've always been confused about, because most unions that I've been interact with, they mostly care about compensation and fairness, when when it's when they should really be thinking about competitiveness and innovation. The
Yes.
reality is that you could be all fair all day long, but if you are so fair and you're irrelevant, then you're going to lose your job. And,
Mm.
and 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 that to me is where we should be moving in terms of a union, from
Mm.
a old and stale, like, we need to remain fair, versus how do we keep our people innovative and resilient and innovative
Yeah.
and competitive.
Yeah, I love that angle because you're right. That's what they should be doing. And I've been involved with some union activity that has been like that. And instead of just saying unions are the problem, right? I love your angle that says, no, unions should be trying to do this to keep their workers working and make them the best workers that they could be and protect their job because they're the best, because they continue
Yeah.
to innovate and change. Yeah, I love that. I wanted to get your insight a little bit more about something you said a couple minutes ago with the gaming, right? So let's zoom into a middle school classroom and we're going to experiment for a moment and we're going to try some things out. What would you suggest to this teacher in this class to try out so that they could engage their students with some of the gaming ideas?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't even push anything. I would
Mm,
say I would ask the students and get
mm,
a better understanding. First and foremost, what are you doing when you're not in class?
mm,
What games are you playing? What do you enjoy about these games? And many will say, "Well, I play Roblox because I love to play with my friends and we get to collaborate and build these sort of environments." Oh, I love Fortnite because we get these unique sort of drops that where we can sort of showcase our sort of status or scarcity.
mm,
Um, I think what the first piece is all about is identifying uh, what do your kids love to do when they're
mm.
not in class, and then you can start to understand what are the gaming mechanisms that are working already. And uh, I'm saying, uh, how can you build your curriculum around the things that they're already doing? I'm not
Yeah,
suggesting that teachers create a Roblox game,
right.
or I'm not suggesting that they create the next Fortnite. I'm saying, how can teachers utilize the game mechanics, or even utilize some of the games in order to get a message across?
Mm,
The beauty with some of these games is that you could build your own worlds, right?
yeah.
In Roblox, you could like build your own like city,
Mm,
essentially. And it's like, how do we incorporate our curriculum with things that people are doing already, and maybe even invite people to a Roblox particular game where we build our own cities. Maybe it's using other things that they've seen online in order to engage with students. So I don't want to be prescriptive. I think it's just asking stupid questions and sitting back and seeing what your students say, because the sands are always shifting, right? A game what people are on today and what people are doing today might be fundamentally different in 6 months, into a year. And so you always have to be asking and learning about what they're doing.
Yeah, and a teacher it will never be a bad decision to have conversations with students, to allow their voices to be heard, and say, and asking them these questions. What do you do? How do you like to learn? And then the teacher, through a reflective process, can think about engaging it or interacting with it, integrating it into the classroom. I know for me, I felt like when I was in school, my voice was muted, right? I didn't have a say in anything. It was like, do this or go there. And, and sometimes I had to go over there because I didn't want to do what the teacher said. So I love that, including the students. I wanted to get your input on something with podcasting. So I'm watching your videos. I'm watching the way that you're innovating with, these keynotes, right? Changing the game, doing something different that no one else was doing, or no one else that I saw doing it. How could podcasting be done differently? So I was sort of reflecting on your work, and taking it to my work. And I'm thinking to myself, how could this be done differently? I'm like, well, Shawn's coming on. I'll just ask him. So what do you think?
Well, first of all, I love what you're doing on this podcast. I love that you're featuring really creative thinkers and leaders, really trying to disrupt the education space. So I love the format that you're doing. And obviously your audio is crisp, and obviously you put a lot of work into it. I think most people don't see the behind the scenes and how much work it takes to have a very successful podcast. I love podcasts. I'm addicted to podcasts. I'm addicted to audio. I think it's a great format for learning. I think the idea of whether you're in the car, where you're working out, or wherever you are, that you're learning all the time. I think it's unbelievable. I credit podcasts over the last decade to my sort of self-improvement, improving my business, etc. The podcast game is really interesting. I think it's definitely evolving, in the sense that the way to get attention off podcasts is becoming a lot more difficult. Meaning being able to build an audience and grow organically. It's a dogfight, right? Because there's so many podcasts out there. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about radically differentiating yourself. And it's not too dissimilar to what I did with the theater game in terms of keynotes, which was, my whole thing was, how can I be one of one? How can I be unique? How can I stand out from the crowd? And obviously that was based on how it looks and how it feels. That was on me. And I think many podcasters, what they do is they go back to the basics, that this is going to be an interview style podcast, and we're going to interview people that nobody's ever heard about, like Shawn Kanungo, and we're going to get his insights. I think, it's always about differentiation. So, I think one of the ways of, you have to go into the spaces that are hard. The reason why you need to do that is because those are places that people are not playing in. So whether it's building a community on Clubhouse and incorporating social audio around what you're doing, like more engagement and interactivity, which we're seeing, people really love and embrace, and that's been really the rise of Clubhouse, and you've seen it explode. Or it's elevating it through video, or elevating it through other things. It could be augmented reality, virtual reality, live streaming, where it's just a fundamentally unique experience that no one has ever seen before. So I think taking some time to think about what are some things that people are not doing, and they're not doing it because it's hard, and you figure it out because it's hard, you're going to win. When it comes to creating content or doing keynotes in the theater, I know it's hard. And that's why people have not been able to replicate it, because it looks like it's hard, and it is hard. You need a great team. You need to be able to move around. And the fact that nobody's done it till this day is because it's just, it's a moat, right? It's a competitive advantage. So I think it's for you to figure out, what is my unfair advantage in the world when it comes to podcasts, and just doubling down on that.
That's cool. Thinking about innovation a little bit more and a little bit more specifically, there's many different angles, there's many different camps, there's many different agendas and all of those sorts of things. Everyone has their specific spin on it, right? But what are a couple core aspects that need to happen for innovation to occur?
The things that are required for innovation to occur are, I think the best environment is like a permissionless environment, an environment where you are
Hmm.
free to try new ideas. You are empowered to take ideas and go off and experiment. Um, uh, it's a place where your performance management is not uh, tied to uh, your you know directly to your compensation is not directly tied to your all the end results. I think if
Hmm.
your performance management is tied to some of your failures and some of the shots that you're taking and some of the experiments that you're taking, I think that's where you can fuel more innovation. At the end of the day, most people, they want to innovate, but they don't want to risk their job. It's not the risk, it's not the fear of trying new things. It's the fear of losing my job.
Yeah.
And I think if we eliminate that and make people and give people the freedom to try new ways of doing things, I think that will help spur innovation. And I
Hmm.
think the other thing that really helps spur innovation is many people think about innovation as technology when it's not. Innovation can be anything. It could be
Yeah.
about processes, new ways of doing things, new. Yes, it can be about bringing in new technologies, but new student experiences, uh, a new way of organizing your students, or new talent management. It could be so many things other than technology.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people get fussed about the fact that this is technology, so I can't be innovative. The other thing that when it comes to innovation that stops people is that people think that it's like a big idea, it's like a big transformation, it's a big initiative, when it
Hmm.
really is about starting very small and trying small experiments. And I think the one thing that probably people in this podcast have never heard of when it comes to innovation and spurring innovation is actually building inequality. Let
Mm.
me repeat, like building inequality where you actually pump up one innovation so much that other people get inspired around the organization or
Mm.
around the classroom to do something similar, or to create similar innovations. Like you need a
Mm.
magnet. You need something. You need to stand something up and say, "Wow, she did that. I
Yeah.
want to do that too." That
Gotcha.
is this idea of creating artificial inequality to say, "Wow, that was amazing. How can you spur innovation ecosystem around that?"
Mm.
And everyone wants everything to be balanced and fair and easy. But we need stories. We need a narrative.
Yeah.
We need something compelling. And by creating inequality and creating something so awe-inspiring, that can spur others to jump on board, that's what we need.
Yeah, you've also mentioned innovation that dents from the outside. What do you mean by that, and why is that important?
Yeah, I think denting the outside is a new type of disruption strategy where you try to experiment outside of your core, whether it's your core
Hmm.
business or your core teachings. And the reason why you want to do that is because if normally within most organizations, if you try to change something in the
Yeah,
core of what you do, the immune system of the organization will just reject it. And so the
exactly.
best way of bringing innovations and really making something new, or bringing something in, or transforming yourself, is to start to experiment with new ways of doing things outside of your
Mm.
core, and then bringing those things in. I think this is a better way of approaching innovation. And um and it's about denting the outside.
Mm.
Build something outside and then bring it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I would say to that. But I want to get your points, because I know a lot of people in this podcast, they're listening to your thoughts when it comes to technology, leadership, transformation, innovation. So I want to know from you, because you're working with many of these people hand in hand when it comes to innovation and introducing new things. What have you seen that really works? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think the experimenting piece is critical, and giving people freedom to do that. And so there has to be some sort of structure. There has to be a conversation. You can't just tell people at a beginning of the year meeting, yeah, try some cool stuff this year, right? So setting up a structure for people to do that and encouraging that to happen, and this freedom. So when a teacher, they're trying to do a different project and trying to bring kids into the community, let's say a podcasting, they're trying to make kids make podcasts and interview people in their community. So by doing that, you're giving the teachers freedom to experiment, but you're also encouraging them. You're checking in. Maybe there's some sort of innovation coach. Maybe there's some sort of experimenting coach. Maybe there's weekly check-ins where, you're checking in with people that are innovating and experimenting and trying things out, and not seeing failure necessarily as wrong, but seeing failure as a process. So as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, well, this is another reason why innovation's not happening in the schools. And I think this dent from the outside thing really spoke to me. I've been thinking about disruptive innovation, but I like the way that you phrase that, because a lot of times teachers do want to change. They do want things to be good, but they're trying to change the core. And the core is what Michelle Weiss or someone else I talked to recently said. It's like moving a 2,000-pound marshmallow. You can't do it. And what you're saying is dent from the outside, and you can remove it, or you can start a new thing and you'll be able to change it, sort of changing the game. So that's what I've seen. You got to have these conversations. You got to put your money where your mouth is. If you want teachers to innovate, you want them to change things up, you want them to do things differently and change the game, provide structures, provide encouragement, be a cheerleader, send them on, and not look to like slap their wrist if they do something that's a little bit outside the bounds.
I love that. And I think teachers really need to embrace that. And the reality is that I think teachers are on the brink of getting disrupted. I think they're on the brink of getting becoming irrelevant. There are way too many people out there where everyone can be a teacher, right? YouTube is getting unbundled. What does that mean? Like, YouTube is the biggest university on the planet, and half the people on YouTube are teaching something. They're teaching something about math or video or coding. It's on YouTube, and by the way, it's free. And by the way, there's so many more people that are becoming free agents, where they are they're monetizing their craft by selling their expertise in their particular niches. And so, I think if teachers don't wake up and they don't start disrupting themselves and denting the outside and trying new ways of doing things, everyone else is going to eat their lunch, and they need to think about that. Like, this is a competitive game now. I think we forget how many times we compete against like pure entertainment, and we compete against creators and influencers and Mickey Mouse and Minecraft. Like, it just, I think we just forget that.
Yeah, I mentioned Michelle Weiss, a minute ago. We had her on episode 28, and she was mentored by Clayton Christensen with the idea of disruptive innovation. And it was a great conversation. I was excited to sort of pair you guys close to each other on the podcast. How are your ideas similar or different from the disruptive innovation ideas of Clayton Christensen and Michelle Weiss?
Yeah, well, I think Clayton Christensen, RIP, one of the greatest thinkers to ever live. And, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that he died in 2020, right before the pandemic hit and right before the entire world got disrupted and really accelerated innovation. And I think Clayton Christensen, he would have loved to see what happened, because I think a lot of people sort of took his ideas around disruption and really finally put it into motion. I think like Clayton Christensen describes disruptive innovation as a process where you have a product or service that initially takes root in like really simple applications at the bottom of market, and they're typically less expensive, more accessible, and then they move up market, establishing, displacing more established competitors or incumbents. So it's a very, it's a very descriptive model of what we think about disruptive innovation. I kind of want to simplify it, which is disruptive innovation to me is somebody coming into a space and fundamentally changing the status quo. Somebody coming into the space and really taking market share because they are creating something so awe-inspiring, so compelling, so unique that it is pushing the entire industry forward. And I think changing the game, changing the status quo is what to me disruption is really all about. I think it's very it's also different than what I would say creating a market. So there's also a term around blue ocean strategy where you do something that somebody has never done before, or you create a fundamentally new category of work, which is I think different to disruption. Where I think disruption is like when you take existing market share away from somebody else, while
Okay.
creating a new category is yeah, it's different. So like I would say, for
Yeah.
example,
Interesting.
Clubhouse is not a disruptor. I think Clubhouse is a new category of social audio that we haven't seen before. I don't think
Okay.
it's taking away from podcast
No.
as much, but it is a nice addition, and people are using it in new ways. So that's to me what disruption versus, I guess, category creation really looks like.
Yeah, who's doing that really well right now? Changing the status quo, ramping it up a notch, doing things totally different and better than what they were being done.
Yeah, to me, like, some of the companies that I really love when it comes to a disruption standpoint are not the atypical players. Most people think about the disruptors as the technology giants, and
Yeah.
because of their technological prowess, they're able to move to
Hmm.
different verticals and disrupt. I'm really fascinated by some of these organizations that have what I call cultural capital. Like, because they have the power of the community, they can enter into new verticals and really disrupt industries. I'm talking about companies like a Barstool Sports.
Mm.
Many people don't agree with their sort of their platform and what they represent, but because they have the power of the community, they can almost get into anything: crypto, gaming, like
Mm.
food. They are a disruptor in that sense. I look at what some of the creators are doing, individual creators, like people like Mr. Beast. Like, this is a YouTuber who's 22 years old. He can enter into a vertical by having the community at his fingertips. There's a lot of direct to
Mm.
consumer companies like the Warby Parkers, and the
Yeah.
Caspers and the Dollar Shave Clubs
Yeah.
that created a new way of doing things online. And again, really gaining sort of an audience and the community around their particular products. I think what like Glossier has done in the makeup space, where they've really turned their community into evangelists, where they sell their own sort of products, or they're able to sell Glossier products by just evangelizing it and turning
Hmm.
the consumers into like evangelists or producers, which I think is
Yeah.
really cool. So to me, the real interesting disruptors are the ones that are using culture as a disruptor.
Hmm.
And
It's
so that's
interesting.
fascinating. And of course, on the technology side,
Yeah.
like I love, for example, what TikTok is doing from Byte and their parent company ByteDance, and how they're using artificial intelligence to make content more compelling and personalized. And we think about
Mm.
education and what TikTok is doing to education. I mean, it shows what the future of what education might look like totally personalized,
Yeah.
compelling, short form, uh,
Hmm.
user generated, like that. If you want to know what the future of education looks like, go to TikTok.
Hmm. Yeah, we've talked about education. We've sort of jumped all around in our conversation. It's been really interesting, and I want to come back to education for a moment. I want to speak to educators, and just for a moment too. You've sort of disrupted this conversation. I'm not used to being asked questions on the podcast, so you're sort of even flipping the
Well,
script here.
listen, I'm not sure why, because you're someone that has a deep knowledge of this space, and I think I think again, like the audience, I think appreciates your thoughts and ideas on this stuff.
I'm down with that, so I appreciate that. So yeah, let's before we close things up here, let's come back to the educators for a moment,
Yes.
because you've given a lot of great insight, a lot of great things to think about, a lot of things that are one challenging. I feel like you've challenged us, and then you've also sort of motivated and inspired. So I'm sort of balancing those two, right? But I don't want to, I don't want it to be out of whack. Before we close things up, I don't want one side to be too heavy. I don't want people to be discouraged too much before they go, or I don't want people to be too inspired and not challenged enough. So I want you to sort of level this out for us, synthesize it for a moment. What would you say to educators that want to innovate but don't know how?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I think I think the first thing is it's really taking a step back and taking a look at where education is going. Taking a look at the old model of education
Yeah.
versus the new model, and where do you play? What is your, as an educator, where is your unique skill sets? And you might say to yourself, listen, I don't get this technology stuff. That's not my skill set. That's not where I want to play. Well, then you know what? Get people that can. I think the
Mm.
old model of thinking about education is like, how do I own my own expertise and only deliver this in the way that I know? While I
Mm.
think it's taking a very small experiment and saying, how can I start to reinvent myself? How can I start to build in new things that I've never done before and sort of push the boundaries of what I can do? I think it's this idea of quit being so narrowly focused on our academic subject matter,
Yeah.
but really saying, okay, so who can I collaborate with? Maybe
Mm.
I don't have all the knowledge around where the world is going, but who can I
Yeah.
collaborate with that would have appeal to my end students?
Mm.
Whether it's partnering up with gamers or whether it's partnering up with YouTube influencers. Listen,
Yeah.
most kids right now, the job that they want for the future is they want to be a YouTuber.
Yep.
So how can we partner with some of those people to make some of that happen? How do
Mm.
we create to in a very small way? How do we create easy, shareable, bite-sized content that we could repurpose that students would find valuable?
Mm.
How do we enable more peer-to-peer education, and give the students the tools to go off and do it? And I'm not saying to reinvent everything,
Yeah.
but I think it's like taking a very small experiment and just trying
Mhm.
something out. It's saying, you know, over this month or over the next couple of months, I'm just take one small experiment. It's going to take me 6 weeks to, figure out and implement and deploy, and I want to see how I learn from it. And
Mm.
so it's like, how do I take this small experiment and sort of build on that? And what you are going to start to do when you take that small experiment, you will start to build a muscle when it comes
Yep.
to experimentation. You will
Yep.
start to build a mindset around it. And I think that's the best way of
Mm.
fundamentally disrupting yourself and innovating. It's starting with those small steps.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, that's helps us lead to reflection. All the educators out there, including myself, take those nuggets and don't just listen and move on.
Well,
Stop, think,
yeah.
reflect, do. What's
I
up, Sean?
listen. I'm curious from your standpoint. Where do you think education is going? Because I've obviously given this sort of either
Hmm.
you can take it as bleak or you can take it as super inspiring. But where education is going, where do you think it's going? And I'd love to get your sort of opinion because you're deep in this space.
I don't want to come across negative, but a lot of people, and I've interacted with a lot of people that say, "Oh, COVID-19 has disrupted education. It's going to change it forever." And I've sort of been, here's my stance on that. I'm not so sure because unless you change the mindset, unless you change the way people do things, a pandemic is not going to revolutionize and a bureaucratic education system that's been like this since 1912. You know what I mean? That's not going to do it. Now, that might, encourage people, open people's eyes to do education differently, but that in and of itself isn't. So, what's the question, right? It's, do people want to do education differently? And I'm not so sure that they do. I think
Hmm.
a lot of leaders and a lot of teachers and a lot of stakeholders want education to remain the same. Now, I have seen, small, nimble schools and organizations sort of popping up the past couple years, doing things totally different. High school isn't high school. It's, you have a mentor one day a week, and then the rest of the week, I'm partnering you with like authentic internships in the community, and you're going to
I love
learn.
that.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's
Yeah,
go. That's
there we go.
real world,
Exactly.
real world experience. That's what I'm talking about. I love that.
So that's inspiring. That's BV Caps and Iowa Big out in Iowa. Iowa Big's a really inspiring story. So it actually is partnering with the public school system in Iowa. It's not just this independent thing. So it's actually partnering with all of the public school districts, and they're doing things totally different. I want to pause this podcast for a moment to let you know about another great podcast.
Hey everyone, my name is Mike Dunn, and I'm one of the co-hosts of Rethinking EDU. Our podcast is a roundtable discussion about education possibility. We talk with professionals from around the country who are doing groundbreaking work reimagining and remaking schools. Come check us out at rethinkingedu.co or wherever you get your podcasts.
Now let's get back to the show. As we wind things down, who do you want to give a shout out to?
I want to give a shout out to you. And I say this with peace and love. If you've gone this far in this podcast, give this guy a rating, a review, and subscribe, because I think you are pulling together these great people on this podcast, really trying to think about what the future of education is going to look like. And my shout outs to you, because it takes a lot of work and time to pull this together. And so I just hope that people, put the rating and review in. That's my shout out. I know it's not what you were expecting, but it's important. Okay.
Hey, I love it. Time for the final word. Shawn, what do you want to say to close out this podcast?
All I want to say is, if I had a billboard, or if I had a billboard in Times Square, I would just say, innovation does not equal technology. Technology does not equal innovation. You can innovate without understanding technology. If you need technology, you can find the right partners. Don't let the technology strap you down. It's really about thinking differently.
Shawn, thank you so much for joining me on Diving Deep EDU. Appreciate you helping us dive deep into ideas and the application of innovation. To those listening, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Diving Deep EDU. If you like this episode, like Shawn said, subscribe, share it out, post a review on Apple Podcasts. All those things will help get this podcast out to more people. Until next time.
Wow, it's time to reflect. That's astounding. You've been checking out the podcast from Matthew Downing. Hope you like diving deep like a scuba diver. And the show provoked hope. That's our true desire.